Computer. All right, we are recording. Hi, Abba.
Hi, Daniela. How are you today?
I'm good. So this is kind of a really unique thing. So I'm Daniela Platt. I am a journalist and I have a brand strategy company called Looking Good, where I have workshops and books, and I work with brands all over the world, brands that you've heard of like Hugo Boss, Visa, and Skechers. I take ideas from concept from your kitchen table or boardroom into the world. So this is kind of really a fun thing for me. But today, where I'm usually talking to designers and creatives, today this is really interesting. Today I get to talk to my dad, my Abba. So here you go.
Hello, Daniela. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. I know that you are home, quarantined.
Yeah, we are very much home. We are very much home. Home away from our children and grandchildren in California, and home away from our children and grandchildren in Israel. So we are truly home. And the only thing that keeps us going is the fact that after 47 years, your Ima, your mom, and I are pretty much used to each other's foibles.
Well, I tell people quite a bit that, people ask me all the time, how are your parents doing? They're in New York, you're in LA, your brothers in Israel. People ask me, how are they doing? And I'm constantly saying, after 47 years, I think they still like each other. So they're okay.
No, I think actually we like each other more, which is what really the most wonderful part of it.
That's really cute. That's really, really cute. Well, now everybody can understand why it's so fun to interview you, because you're such a charming person. And I know that throughout my days, throughout my journey, I'm constantly saying, well, my dad says this, and my dad says this. And I think at the end of the day, as complicated sometimes as relationships could be, I would definitely say that you in my life have definitely been a hero. In fact, in the book that I just wrote, Looking Good, The 10 Commandments to be a Sales Rock Star, it's actually kind of an inspiration from you. That's what you used to say. The 10th commandment on Wall Street is
to make money. When in doubt, make money. That's it. I learned that from a chairman of our firm. He said, Elliot, if you're ever not too sure what you're supposed to be doing, just figure out the way to make money.
And did anybody know what else to do, the other 9?
Nobody really paid attention. I think one of them that I really recall is never deal with somebody who went bankrupt, which, might have some implications, but I don't want to make anything that could sound borderline like a political statement. But he said we should never do business as a firm with anybody who's gone bankrupt.
So that should probably indicate, okay, so I'm going to backtrack. Let me actually share with everybody who here is in my Forbes Riley Inner Circle group. This is my father, and to me, he is my hero, a man of always wise words, a very subtle wit. There's a ton of things I can say about him, but he also spent how many years on Wall Street, rising pretty much?
Well,
Yeah, how many years on Wall Street?
Well, 24 years if on the street, which we'd call the street at Donaldson, Lufkin, Jenner at DLJ. But prior to that, I was not too far away from the street. I spent 6 years at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
Okay, so 30 years on Wall Street. And the nuggets that come out of my dad, from whether it's advice on parenting, advice on how to build your home, or things from Wall Street, they always just make you pause. So I thought it would be really fun to ask my dad a few questions. Before I wrote my book on the 10 Commandments to be a Sales Rock Star and Fashion Startup Playbook, I asked my dad, can I interview you? We're sitting here, we're in COVID. Can I spend 1 hour with you every day for you to give me an hour of your time? And I just thought we would call it like Talks Over the Tri-Bar, because he's got the greatest stories of being a first-generation American. But he said no. So instead, you got a playbook on fashion from me. But I wanted to just interview my dad and ask him, Abba, there's a couple of things that I remember. There's a couple of things when I think of the 3 lessons that you taught me. One is, I'm just going to share 3 lessons that I think you taught me over the years. One is you taught me how to swim. And And would you agree that's a really important thing in life, right? Like everybody swims.
Very important, very important survival skill. Even the Babylonian Talmud tells us that a man has an obligation to teach his children how to swim. Very important skill.
So, you know, in every day in life, right? It's kind of a lesson and a metaphor in life, right? We're treading waters all the time, but you always, you know, sometimes you have to keep your head on water, but you always have to know how to breathe in wild, unknown circumstances. So you taught me how to swim, right? Because that's what you did, right?
Okay.
Before Wall Street, you were a lifeguard. Number two is, we had this conversation years ago, and I said, I remember saying respect. Respect is really important. Something that you strive for when you're working is respect. And you had a different approach. I wonder if you remember this conversation on respect, I wonder if you're going to remember what is the value of working hard and craving respect? Do you remember what your answer was, or should I just share it?
I don't remember exactly what the answer was. So why don't you share it? Because I wonder, you know, I'd like to hear it because I'm sure I probably want to amplify on it, and I probably have some different nuances over the years. So, sure. What was my answer, you know, when you first asked it?
Sure. So maybe this is probably going back about 2 decades when I was starting my career off in the world of advertising at the time it was in New York. And I said, Abba, I really feel like I'm doing great work and I'm being successful at it, but I don't know that I feel respect from my bosses, from the people above me, from my group. I'm doing really well, but where's the respect? And your answer to me was, don't work for respect. Work for your own moral compass and do the best work that you can do. Don't expect anybody to respect you. Everybody's too busy with their own sense of self. Work for your best self. And the only respect that you need are the people that you provide for and the people in your inner circle.
Well, I think there's a couple of ways to look at that. I think I basically, you know, I don't recall exactly the conversation where we got into that, but, you know, I think it's very important that you have a sense of respect, which is not necessarily contingent upon other people always giving you attaboys or respecting you. It was a very crass expression on Wall Street that you're not working, you know, for the congratulations necessarily. You're working in an environment just to make more and more money for the firm and therefore accrue a greater bonus. In some sense, sometimes when I was with the New York Fed, and of course there the financial rewards were much, much more limited. But there, you know, let's say if one did a very good research piece, there would be all sorts of praise. Oh, yeah, this was very well written. This was very well thought out. This was very well researched. And on Wall Street, on the other hand, people do get very, very engrossed in the monetary outcome of whatever is done. And you could do something that's very, very, perhaps very, very good in an academic sense, but it doesn't necessarily have bottom line results. So I think you have to be very much, you have to be a very strong person. And instead of craving the respect from others, what you have to do is sort of crave your own respect, that you're doing the job right. Whatever you're doing with full integrity. You're working as hard as you possibly can at it. You have no pangs of remorse that perhaps you didn't put in enough effort. And, you know, I think if you adhere to that, you maintain your integrity, which is extremely, extremely important. I think the most important trait, and the one that I was known for, and I'm most happy that I was known for that I was a person of great integrity. If I made a mistake, I would fess up. I wouldn't hide behind it. Or, you know, very, very often economists have a tendency, if I may go a little bit astray, very often economists will say, oh, something was messed up with the data. It wasn't my forecast, but they've changed the data, or the data are not revealing things. You have to have enough respect in yourself to say, I made a mistake. And I did everything I could to have not made that mistake. and I'm going to work really, really hard. As I worked on that effort, I'll work on all my other efforts. And eventually, hard work and hard work, application, and dedication will get you many more correct answers than incorrect answers, and you'll earn respect that way. If I may, I think that one moment when I think I did earn respect, and it wasn't in a very fatuous way, I think it was sincere, is when I announced my retirement.
That
and
was,
tell
everybody how old you were. How old were you when you retired?
I was 56. I was very fortunate that A, I could do it financially, and B, I had a bevy of interests that I wanted to pursue, some of which I just did not have the time, in the context of the kind of job that I had, did not have the time to pursue. And at the time that I retired, I felt that the congratulatory remarks that people made to me were not just perfunctory remarks, that there was a sense that, wow, this guy really, really, he was at this firm 24 years. He put in his time, and he really did. I think I did do a very good job. I was successful enough to retire at that age. But B, that he comported himself with a great deal of integrity. It was obvious that he was working hard. It was obvious that he was enthusiastic about his work. I mean, there was this amorphous sense that people were saying those kinds of things to me. Not just saying, "Oh, good, great," happy retirement.
Well, Abba, I'm going to go ahead. So we've covered number one. The one thing that you've taught me was swimming. Number two, you taught me this whole, and I'm so glad you expanded on respect. The last thing, I have a couple more questions for you, but the last thing that I'm thinking that you always used to preach, and you can expand on this, is you said, don't look at the Dow Jones. Don't worry about that number. It's only the S&P that matters. And I feel like so often people come crushing with the teary eyes, and they don't know what happens. They don't really understand what's happening. Is there any nugget you can give to your grandchildren's generation of what they should pay attention to? Just one nugget, because I know it gets really complicated. What should they pay attention to to have a financially secure life?
Well, I think that, the fact that I was admonishing you to maybe look at the S&P versus the Dow Jones, that was more, in a sense, an economist technical point that I was admonishing you about as you pursued your business school career. I think that's a technical, perhaps just a technical issue, but I think that, I think that there are a couple of things that people have to bear in mind in a career. I think number one, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, but I think you have to know how to work smart. That's number one. And I think that working smart means you have to know how to prioritize. I mean, I always felt you have to know how to prioritize, and you have to also have realistic expectations as to what you can accomplish. And sometimes you have to be willing to push the envelope, but also within the context of pushing the envelope, you have to stay realistic. For example, one of the things that I did on Wall Street that was fairly unique was that I tried to integrate short and long-term forecasting. I started out my career as what was called a money market economist, and I was primarily focused on what the Fed would do almost on a daily basis. And that would get us into some technicalities that don't really prevail in the current policy-making environment. But at the same time, as my career grew, we were still very much focused. And when I say we, I mean the very good staff that I had and myself. We were still very much focused on short-run objectives, but we also were trying very hard to do longer-term interest rate forecasting. Now, that being said, a lot of people said to me, you're not going to be able to do it. You just can't be successful at both ends. You can't be successful at, say, both ends of the yield curve. You can't predict what the Fed funds rate's going to be tomorrow, and you can't predict what the 30-year bond's going to be 6 months from now. You can't, those are two different jobs. And we integrated that, but we also took the attitude that we had so many things that we were working on that there was no way we could really, let's say, hit the ball out of the park on every single topic. So, for example, if I had 10 things to do every day or 10 things to accomplish every week, I didn't say to myself, let's do an A+ job on all 10, because that was impossible. But I felt if we did a B+, A- job on all 10 items, the net of the sum of it would be an A job. But if we
so like perfection, like done is better than none, kind of like take everything to the as far as you can.
Well, without being
and the collective
right.
being the A.
Just an example that I used with your mother the other day is, let's say I used to write a market letter. No. This is not a domestic issue. This is a business issue that I don't know the context in which it came up, but I was discussing this with her that I used to publish a market letter every Friday. Now, maybe.
What was it called?
It was.
Wasn't it the BMW?
Money notes.
I thought it was the BMW.
Or bond market. At some point, it started as Money Notes, and then it became Bond Market Weekly. The publication, the full publication, became Bond Market Weekly.
Yes, you wrote a new BMW.
The article I wrote myself was called Money Notes. But the point I wanted to make is that we published that on Friday, and I had to really discipline myself not to start thinking about that until about Thursday afternoon. Because if I had started to think about it on Monday, I would have obsessed all week about it. Now, to be sure, there were probably some weeks when I took a look at the market letter and said, gee whiz, I could have done it better. I could have done it better, May, if instead of starting Thursday, it started Monday. But what about the other 9 things that I had to accomplish during the week? They would have fallen by the wayside. So the first thing is, you don't have to necessarily be that smart. I don't think I was far from the smartest economist there on Wall Street. Certainly not the smartest, far from the smartest guy in DLJ. The place was infested with brilliant people. But you
can't knock yourself there.
You have to, you have to work smart. You have to work hard. You have to work very, very hard. And unfortunately, in a research job, it's perhaps a little bit harder to shake the tensions of the office because, there's this aphorism, research never rests, because research is something that's in your mind. If not that, traders, I don't want to disparage or minimize the efforts that traders made, but conceivably, and let me preface it, they lived and they worked under very tense conditions because they were moving big sums of money around and taking considerable risk in that respect. But one could sort of say in a lot of endeavors, and maybe let me get out of the trading environment altogether. Let me get out of the Wall Street environment altogether. In a lot of endeavors, you come home from the office 6, 7 o'clock at night, and maybe you've had an extremely difficult day at work, but you can say, well, we got this in, we got these orders out, we booked this advertising page. In a research job, it's very often it's very often the case that in a research job that you really can't you can't just leave your brain at the office. And so I might be helping you with your homework or helping Brian with his homework, or if we were out even on a Sunday or on Shabbos going to shul or whatever.
Shut your phone.
Second. Wait. I thought Ema would pick it up. Okay, she's got it. All right. So.
But if I can just cut one, if you can say one thing that is it a concern of yours for I don't even know what this coronial generation is going to experience. If you could say in 30 seconds, one thing, like work hard or, stand up for yourself, or when in doubt, make money. Like what is like the one thing that you want to just say to Ava, who's 4? What do you want to just say to her? You want to like look in her eyes and just say, be yourself and live big. Like, what do you want her to have?
Well, I think she has to be herself. I would tell Ava and any other of my, God bless them, there are 9 of them now. I would tell any of the grandchildren that, the world is going to be a different place. And I think that no matter how we evolve, and we're going to have a totally different work structure, I think, at the end of this, of this COVID thing, where we're not going to be in the office, but it's going to be always, again, you have to work smart. You have to see the niches. You have to be very organized about what you're doing. You have to be very, very, very dedicated. You have to make sure you pick a field that you enjoy. I was very fortunate because I thought being an economist was extremely well suited to my various skills and interests, and it combined analytic ability with writing ability and actual human interaction. So I think people have to be very honest about what they can do. They have to always be people of integrity in dealing with others. And, I just think people are just going to have to plug away. The work's going to be harder, perhaps, but it's going to, maybe it'll actually be easier because there won't be the strain of commuting because everything will be done by the phone. But if I had to say, I would say just people should just study hard, work very, very hard, and be honest in evaluating what you yourself can do, and then be extremely honest in all your dealings with all your fellow people. And always
the truth is the best lie.
Yeah, right.
The best lie is the truth, right? That's the line.
Yeah, actually, that was my father would say that in Yiddish. That the best
say it in Yiddish. Say it in Yiddish.
The best ligan is the emes.
The best liganess is the MS. The lie is the best truth. No, the truth
is
the best lie. Yeah, the truth is the best.
Yeah, right. Because if you lie, you have to keep track of it. You have to keep the story going. But if you tell the truth, and you tell the truth, the product, customer says, do you have this and this a product? Let's say you're in the fashion industry, you have to say, no, I don't have the product. You're certainly better off saying that than sending him an inferior product, which means you disrespected him and he in turn is going to disrespect you. Totally. So you have to do that, or you have to be able to say, you have to say at some points. And I was at meetings and things happened all of a sudden. I said, guys, you got to leave me alone for 5-10 minutes. I don't have the answer. Give me 5-10 minutes and we'll figure this out. And that's what I would say. I think that, there are other things that are still going to be very, very important. This whole globalization phenomenon. I think the need to know as much in terms of international affairs. Certainly if somebody were becoming an economist now, they should be studying much more international economics than I was, just focused on econometrics and monetary theory.
But you're giving 30 seconds of a nugget to Ava. So then 30 seconds is like...
30 seconds is work hard, pick a profession that you really, really are interested in. Do not get mesmerized by, let's say, the dollar signs that another profession might provide. If you stick to what you like and you are willing, because you like it, you're willing to work very hard at it, and you're willing to work very smart at it, you'll see that even if your objective has not been financial remuneration, that will come. That will come. And if it doesn't come, and in some industries it just doesn't happen. If you go into, you may go into something like education, let's say there are upper bounds on what one can make relative to, let's say, a Wall Street career. But
Abba, I just want to pause and just interject and just say that is kind of what happened for me in my career. I of course I write about everything in the book, but you used to say to me, one day you're going to pay for your wisecracks. One day you're going to pay for your silly personality. And then I came home one day and I said, Abba, I got a job. I'm working at an advertising agency. And you were like, it makes sense. They pay me now for the wisecracks. So that was like, you know, what you would say to me too, right? You know, go with who you are and the trajectory and let it follow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, you can't, you know, I think we can see it in, you know, even the context of our small family where, you know, you would probably view, well, Ema, of course, had the technical school, the technical skill, having been in, you know, a dental hygienist by profession, and she had this interest in art, which led her to be an assistant curator in a local gallery. But, you know, you have, let's say, your brother and I, who very much are analytic people, and you're much more, you know, we're analytic, and we're perhaps, you know, somewhat reclusive, you know, as we do our analytic work. And in your case, it's obvious that while you're very capable of analytic stuff, you also have this tremendous ability to interact with people. And so, you know, it would be wrong. It would have been wrong for me as a parent to think that, let's say, you and Brian could be along the same career paths, because you're totally, you know, your personalities direct you in different ways. And they're both equally respectable. And we're, you know, equally proud of your achievements in both areas. And it just, there's no, you know, there's no one shoe fits all in parenting. There's no one shoe fits all in career guidance.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that was always really interesting to me is behind every school, behind every church, behind every synagogue, behind every organization, somebody is there controlling the show. And sometimes that person is someone who's very obvious about it. And then sometimes it's the person that, you know, not everybody knows and doesn't really want anybody to know, but a few in your inner circle know that you were the one who ruled the show. And here's my question. I know that you got up at 4 and you left for work at 5, and somehow you came home, and then you were back at the meetings. You were that man who ran the show for the synagogue and for the school, and not just my school, but my brother's school. I saw you. A lot of people will say, I never saw my father. My father was so busy, or my father wasn't so successful, but he was around more. I don't know how you did that, but I remember you came home, we had dinner, we had catch, you taught me how to do the number 35 question on the SAT. There was times when Aunt Sylvia would say, like, we saw Elliot on TV. How did you have this incredible balance of, I didn't realize all that you were doing until I was probably graduating college. How did you balance all that and for me to just think you're my dad and you were always present? How did you do that?
Well, I think you have to very early on, you have to establish some boundaries. You know, you're right. I mean, I was up, it wasn't quite, there were some occasions when it was before 5 a.m, but I was up generally around 5:15, and I was on the 6:30 or 6:32 or 6:34 out of Hewlett. But you establish a boundary, namely that dinner at home is a sacrosanct event. And so I made a rule for myself that I was out of the office, I think except for Thursday night when money supply data came out. You know, I was out of the office, and I was on the, I think on the 510. So let's say I was on the 510 out of Penn Station, New York, you know, coming into Woodmere at 6 o'clock at night. And now what perhaps you and your brother didn't really see is that, or you didn't focus on, is I came home with a full briefcase. And, you know, for a long time in my career, I had a little rule for myself that I didn't do any real reading while I was at work, background reading, let's say. I would only, at work, I would be focused on either talking to the traders I was with, meeting with a customer, preparing a meeting, or doing some writing or doing some calculations. But if I had to read some background material, say something like the economic report of the president or the budget message, I brought all those things home and I worked at night. So, when you people may not have realized, after 9:30, I was still plugging away till about midnight, but that was a lifestyle decision that I made.
Mm-hmm.
I, imposed certain rules. Let's say that I wouldn't travel for more than 2 or 3, at maximal, let's say 2 or 3 days at a stretch, unless let's say it was foreign travel where I couldn't control it. It might be out of the house an entire week, but I'd always try to get back on Friday.
Yeah,
So
you used to have a funny story, right? Breakfast in Berlin, lunch in.
Yeah, well, that was, I had, I don't want to take the time because I can't recall the thing right now, but there were 2 episodes where I ate each meal of the day in a different city. There was like a London, Frankfurt, Amsterdam day, and then there was like a Paris, I think a Paris, Brussels, and then you were studying in Israel, so I think it was Paris, Brussels, Jerusalem.
So the point that we're getting to is we always had catch. You were available. A lot of people say that, and for me, I never really, I knew what you were doing, but it never really seemed to be such a challenge until I became an adult. And now people would say to me, how does he do all that? I'm like, I don't know. I just wasn't a thing. You were always available, even though I knew you did everything for everybody under the sun.
Yeah, no, because you have to establish rules for yourself, and you have to establish rules that other people are going to have to respect and they're going to have to accept. In other words, I didn't readily make myself available to go out for drinks with a client. I mean, somebody wanted me to go talk to a client about the economy. I said, okay, let's go over there around 4:00. And all right, instead of, taking the 5:20 train home, the 5:10 train home, okay, I'll take the 6:10 train home. I'll come home an hour late. But I did not let myself, now I'm not saying it was right or wrong, each person makes his own decision, but I didn't let myself get onto that. I didn't get into this thing of, being, looking to play golf with clients over the weekend.
Right.
I didn't get involved in, let's say, if I wanted to go to a basketball game, there was a period when I shared season tickets for the Mets with some friends of mine. I took you and Brian, or I took Ema. And, it wasn't a client thing. So, whether or not that had an impact on my career, it might have, but, it certainly was a decision I wisely make. And I'll give you a contrast, and I don't take anything away from the person who said this to me. And I believe he's unfortunately passed away, somebody not much older than myself, but I remember meeting him on a plane. Another DLJ or an investment banker, and we happened to be both in Minneapolis, unknowing that we were both there. I was there on some economics mission with a corporate salesman, and he was trying to nail down a deal. And on the plane, he was talking about how much he traveled, and I said, "How do you do?" He said, "Well, my wife has this sort of big job in some charity, and it's like." She has her life, I have my life, and then we have our life together. Well, I viewed ourselves, our family unit, as having one life. And, obviously it was very important to me, A, to be able to support you guys nicely, and B, it was very important. I have to admit, I was driven to achieve professional success, let alone, whatever monetary success came with that. But, it was also, I wanted to achieve success in this, raising a nice family, and having a good relationship with one's wife, and a meaningful one was also part of my success story.
Absolutely.
It's part of the whole picture. So it didn't get sacrificed.
Discipline, having good discipline is really hard, but that is when you can craft your roadmap to success. It's much easier to just get up every day, wake up late, and get up every day and eat poor food and be reckless with your money. But it takes a lot of energy and exercise to actually invoke the discipline in order to see the results of this life that you've been building, that you've built all these years.
Yeah. And, again, I was not partially, maybe to a very large extent, I was driven to early retirement because I thought that even in the context of all these things that you suggest, that, even in the context of being available, to my family, whenever it was at all feasible, I always told your mother that, you want to go out during the week, come into the city, we'll go out, we'll go to a show during the week. You want to go, then, we do it, 1 or 2 nights, if we did it 2 nights in a row, and then we both kind of crash. But, even in the context of all that discipline, I've had a very meaningful retirement, and I've had a very meaningful retirement because I had all these things that I wanted to accomplish and I wasn't accomplishing. So, you just have to know at some point that as much as you want to be professionally successful, that doesn't mean that you have a successful life.
At life that's interesting. Success at life is so much more than financial success.
Well, there's, I think there was the president of Harvard. I think his last name was Elliott. And he once said that the purpose of a liberal arts education, as opposed to a business education, the purpose of liberal arts education is not to teach man how to make a living, but how to live. And I think you always have to, making a living is only part of living. And, living is really finding somebody you love and get married and have wonderful kids and with God's help, beautiful grandchildren. Poo, poo, poo.
Well, that was all lovely. That was all really lovely. Abba, I'm going to take you on a walk across the dance floor for a second. You were talking before, you mentioned Thursdays money supply data would roll out. And you also, I talk about this in my book, of course, too. But this is something that, this is going to take you on a walk across the dance floor, but you're a man of style. You're the guy at the Yankees game who's like, fully dressed beautifully. What is it about, how do you dress like a VIP? Like, that's something that was so important to you. You used to say you have to dress up for the data.
Right. Yes. right. I used to say, I used to say it in the sense that you have to, the data's coming out, you have to dress up because if you respect the data will respect your forecast. Yeah.
So you have to, like, it's a little bit of a mindset, but when you dress well and when you ante up, the goodness and the wealth and the opportunity comes your way when you are present, and then you're being your full present self as well. So that's I think those funny things that you imparted upon me.
Yeah, well, I think, to some extent that was, kind of a Wall Street shtick at the time, which may not, really be that germane anymore. But, there was, there was in my working days, certainly, up until the last couple of years of it, there was a certain conformity, and there was a certain almost respect for the workplace that people had. That you came into the workplace dressed very, very properly, and part of that was, I think that was part of an overall decorum. Just like you wouldn't, let's say, come into a workplace or you'd be upset if you were in a workplace and you heard the people cursing and you heard people screaming and yelling at each other. I think it did add, certainly in those days, it was perceived that added to somehow the overall decorum of the establishment, that men, came to work in a suit and a nice tie. Maybe I myself, I have a little bit of a thing for clothes to begin with, but that definitely, that definitely added to it. And I sometimes had the hypothesis that, and I developed this around 2008 when, we had the big, the Great Recession. We almost plunged into a repeat of the Great Depression. but a lot of that was based on regulatory failure that, number one, the regulators failed, but number two, there were a lot of institutions around. I don't want to, get myself into a libel suit, but there were a lot of institutions around that not playing by the rules. And one of the hypotheses, I've tried this on a couple of my ex-professional colleagues, is that one of my hypotheses was that as people became just more lax about how they dressed around the office and how they acted around the office, that they simultaneously became a bit more lax here imposed. Did we have a breakdown? Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. You were talking about people becoming really lax around the office, and then I froze. So yeah, what happens when people become lax around the office?
Yes, I'm saying I have this hypothesis that some of the laxity that developed, let's say, in the early part of the current century, let's say people, we used to have maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months, a Dress Down Friday, and then Dress Down Friday was 5 days a week. I'm saying that some laxity, like I don't have to adhere to this standard. I don't have to adhere to that standard. And before you know it, people would say, well, the SEC has that rule, but let me see if I can bend it a little bit. And, let me see if I can bend it a little bit. And I'll just, if I may, can I tell you an anecdote, which actually you were a participant in, but you were too young to know about it. One day you came with me to visit at DLJ, and we went up. Yeah, it was maybe it was for the annual winter holiday party or whatever. You came and we went upstairs to. I was showing you around, and we went upstairs to the floor where the investment bankers were, and sure enough, we ran into some people whom we knew from home. And it turned out they were telling me that they were going to do an IPO through DLJ. And as soon as I walked out of that, I said, gee whiz, I can never buy that stock because I just became an insider. I just know something that's going on about the company. So I think that the people of my generation, I'm sure that most of the people of this generation still have that strong sense of integrity. But, this was before people got into trouble because of insider trading. I knew intuitively that if I had information that somebody else didn't have, I was not supposed to use that. Nobody had to tell me that. And I think that came from a sense that there were rules to which one had to adhere, whether the rule or there were customs to which one had to adhere, whether the custom was that you had to have a nice tie and jacket and, a blazer and an open collar shirt. We're not going to do it. We're not proper attire. I think that somehow amorphously crept into the whole bone structure and, prevented much worse. And that's not to say that a lot of guys with nice looking suits didn't get themselves into trouble. Some of the guys who wound up in jail or wound up totally discredited also were maybe externally look pretty sharp and pretty conformist. But that was one of my sort of pet arguments.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense that when you are put to do your absolute best and you are, forced to not just do, your number 1 through 10, but you're supposed to reach up and do number 20 and 30, that it causes you to rise and be more buttoned up. But as things kind of loosen, people are more casual, people are talking more. So that makes sense. So I'm going to close this interview right now because your son-in-law just walked into the room.
and said your daughters need your attention. Hi, how are you? Has she interviewed you yet?
No, this is a one-time special. So I'm just gonna close. I'm just gonna say, you know, you are on one hand the man that runs the entire show, and on the other hand you are the kindest giving person, which I guess goes back to the giving part of somebody needs to give so the show can run. So
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, so I'm super happy. I've been wanting to, you know, share your story because this is just a bit. But you know, everybody has legacies and things they want to impart, and you know, it's my responsibility to hold on to whatever legacies that I can to share the story. And they're good stories, but they seem to always happen on moments where you don't have a pen. You're in traffic on the Triborough trying to go somewhere, and the greatest story about your grandfather going to jail for prohibition comes out. I mean, when do you get these stories? But
It wasn't your grandfather, was your great uncle, not your grandfather.
You want to share that story, or elephants on the trading show floor, or carrots, or making markets, or any? Anyway, I won't put you under pressure to share anything.
We'll do that for another. You know, if you have me back again, we'll do the one about the elephants. Although that my knowledge of that story is you know, secondhand. It happened a couple of weeks before I joined DLJ, but it was pretty famous. It's part of the lore. So yeah. Maybe next time around we'll tell that story.
Oh, okay. Bait the audience. Great. I think
if you want it now, I can tell it to you now.
Can I guess the story and you say yes, no, yes, no? Barnum and Bailey, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. Yes or no?
That's what happened. What happened was that somehow somebody from DLJ found the guy, the elephant trainer, whatever, and he convinced them to bring the elephant into DLJ. And they got the elephant up and through the storage elevator or whatever it is, and the service elevator. And the story is that the elephant came to the trading floor. And among other things that happened was that the elephant decided to relieve himself. And, you know, all the jokes about, you know, what happens, you know, what sort of flood do you have when an elephant relieves himself proved to be true. So a couple of months into my tenure there were some guys, at some point, there was, this is like maybe 6 months into my tenure there, we were starting to get interest in the futures market. I can't take this because this call keeps coming. They keep calling me. So we were getting involved in the futures markets, and some guys, just in chatting with each other, chatting with people from another brokerage house, they got into some sort of a bet, but it was about futures, and the futures were carrots. It was futures and carrots. And they insisted that if you wound up as the owner, if you wound up owning the carrots, you had to take delivery. In other words, you had to, usually you don't. You usually in the futures markets, you consummate the trade before any real delivery takes place. So one day, something like, you know, a couple of tons of carrots descends upon our trading room. So I'm walking out of the elevator on my way home, and we each had a couple of bunches of carrots because it was just so many. Everybody took some carrots home, and we stopped the doorman, or the I guess the doorman or the guard, you know, in the lobby. He's looking at us, and the fellow I'm with says, you know, you ought to go upstairs. These guys have carrots. Would you believe? He says, after I saw the elephant, I believe anything. So that was, that's the elephant and the carrots, the carrot story follow-up.
That is so funny. All right, Abba, I'm going to let you go. I'm just going to say,
all right,
guys, this was my dad.
So long, guys.
Thank you. I'm Daniela Platt, concept to market strategist at Looking Good Yeah. And I love to give people exposure. Whoever wants to come live, give me a call. If you have an idea, let's unlock it and let's take it into the world. Thank you, Abba. If anybody wants to reach you and ask information about the market or how to be a great dad or grandparent, call me and I'll ask him because he's retired.
Okay. My pleasure. Take care, Daniela. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.